the Bell. Bloomberg's comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick alongside Scarlet Fu. We're counting you down to the closing bell, and here to help take us beyond the bell. It's a global simulcast with our friends Madison Mills and Jess Menton. Welcome to our audiences across Bloomberg Television, Radio Originals, and our partnership with those folks streaming on YouTube. A quick check of equity markets here, Maddie, right now. Green across the screen on the day and on the week.
Yeah, definitely some good news when it comes to the trade. But I just saw a headline crossing the terminal from our Anna Wan, our chief economist here at Bloomberg. Not as rosy of a picture. She says that the 2 months heading into the crash in 2008, we also saw a lot of soft data. So we shouldn't be too excited about the soft data that we got in earlier today as a sign of a soft landing to come. We could still be seeing that recession heading into the second half of the year or early 2024, Jess.
Well, when you look at the S&P 500 auto weekly basis up 1%. And so this puts it up 9 of the past 11 weeks. And also the NASDAQ 100 up for the week, up 10 of the past 14 weeks.
Not to mention that the NASDAQ Composite had its best day in about 2 months as we pretty much reversed what happened at the end of yesterday's trade. It's as if the BOJ did not do anything.
Yeah, things are settling down here. We should point out the VIX now trending down. We're down around 13 here. The moves that we're seeing in several sovereign Treasury yields are also moving a little bit lower, just a tad bit here on this day. And a lot of risk assets across the board are getting bid up, though we should point out there is some crowding in big tech, a little bit of shunning of some of the other areas as well. A big earnings week this week, an even bigger one next week. Apple and Amazon on deck. But for now, let's live in the moment here as we get the closing bells on this Friday afternoon. A Dow Jones Industrial Average up about 0.4% on the day. A similar move on a weekly basis. The S&P 500 flirting with 4,600. It looks like it's going to close just below that, right around 45.82, up about 1% on the day. And, well, that's going to be good for a 1% gain on the week. The NASDAQ Composite up about 2% on the day and on the week as well. And the Russell 2000 closing out this Friday with a gain of about 1.4%.
Yeah, and Romaine, I know you guys talked about this in the show a little bit earlier, but so interesting to continue to get notes from the likes of Michael Hartnett saying that rates are not, they're too low to pop that AI baby bubble. But I just don't know how you argue with the numbers that we're seeing, the green on the screen for all of these big tech names that continue to mention AI throughout their earnings calls. Scar, it's just going to continue to be the story.
Just embrace it. Are we not allowed to just have just
I don't think we're allowed to have a day.
Okay.
I really don't.
Right. I think the CEOs have embraced it. That's certainly been the case.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at how the sectors have performed. This is for the day. You have autos and components leading the way, and this is really Tesla helping lead that sector higher. Media, entertainment, Meta, Warner Brothers Discovery, Netflix lifting that group up by 2.5%. And household and personal products, that's P&G for you, up by more than 2%. On the downside, insurance companies losing more than 1%. That's as Aon and Hartford Financial each lose more than 5%. Real estate investment trusts also losing 0.25% as a group.
All right, well, I'm going to give us some of our gainers here, Scarlett. Thanks so much for walking us through some of those. I want to start off, obviously, tech is leading the day, but I want to dig into some particulars here. Starting with Netflix, it's up a little over 3% after the Journal reporting that the streaming giant is restructuring its advertising partnership with Microsoft. Also seen a bump in Microsoft, of course, today. Microsoft originally won this ad partnership deal with Netflix to provide the technology for its ad-supported option that we've all been seeing and talking about, that subscription for the subscription offering for consumers that was a little bit cheaper because of the ads. This restructure could lower prices for other advertisers and attract some companies that had previously been priced out on that offering. So that's why we're seeing some green when it comes to the Netflix story. I also want to go over.
Can I just slip in there too?
Yeah.
I thought the move that we saw on Roku today, which seemed to kind of piggyback off some of those same issues, it was up like 30% or something, best day going back to 2017. But this idea here that the worst case scenarios for streamers and platforms like Roku, that seems to now be being priced out altogether as well.
Well, also, when you look at the success of Netflix kind of tampering down on the password sharing, even though their earnings picture wasn't that great this quarter, it's still huge that so many people went into adding an additional subscription for their houses. Also, Newell Brands doing well after their earnings, and Lam Research, I know you love this, Romaine, the best performer in the S&P this week.
That's right.
Taking a look, unfortunately, at the losers for the day.
They're decliners. Don't call them losers. Wow.
the decliners then. Enphase Energy. So this was the biggest decliner in the NASDAQ 100, looking at this drop around 7.5%. So its worst day since April 26th. But this is a solar equipment manufacturer. So it did have results, unfortunately, it did miss on revenue. And they did have that weak forecast. Another one I'm looking at is, of course, the oil majors, Exxon, ticker symbol XOM, that down a little bit more than 1%. So worst day in about 2 weeks, but still, even though when you're looking at these oil giants and they did report lower profits, they did still lift the shareholder payouts. So that's why it's not down more than that. And then I had to bring up what's happening with Sweetgreen. I'm not sure how, if Maddie, if you go and buy this, a little bit of expensive when it comes to some of these salads, but stock's down close to 9%. So it's worst day since February 27th from earlier this year. So unfortunately, it did report weak sales and narrow some of its losses.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit earlier about Wingstop, which was down like 8%, but that was on the back of like higher chicken wing prices, which according to the analysts is up like 30% just in a month. Same thing. I mean, they're both healthy.
Different price points. Sweetgreen salad, $20 during work days. And yeah, $20
What
a
are you
Sweetgreen
ordering,
salad.
Scarlett?
I get the normal one and maybe add one little thing.
Caviar
and
on top
that
or
brings
something?
It up. It's not even.
Just real quickly before we just get too far afield, I do just want to point out another decliner. Live Nation, like right into the close, actually dropped about 8%. And this is basically on the back of a report by Politico citing some concerns here about antitrust and the idea that the Justice Department might actually come after the company. Remember, this is Ticketmaster, effectively. That's what we're talking about here, and we all sort of know the drama behind that. So keep an eye on that stock heading into next week. Let's check in on yields real quickly here. There was a lot of volatility in the yield space this week, but you wouldn't know it if you sort of woke up today and compared it where we were last Friday. 4.83 on a 2-year yield last Friday. Right now we're at 4.87. Similar moves that we saw across the curve here. All told, we saw a little bit of a tamp down in yields on a daily basis here, but overall here slightly higher on a weekly basis.
Yeah, well, I think Scarlett said this earlier. It feels like markets are totally sloughing off that BOJ surprise move, and it's all about the positive data that we got here in the U.S. this week. But I do want to point out something that Lisa Abramowitz put really well in the surveillance newsletter, saying that we used to get forward guidance, and now it feels like we're getting strategic ambiguity. It depends on the data. It's meeting to meeting. So, Scarlett, I wonder, are we past the era of getting a clue into what these central banks are going to be doing, and now is it a guessing game?
Well, the central banks themselves don't necessarily know what they're going to do. At least that's what Jay Powell would have us believe, right? That every meeting is a live meeting. They don't decide on anything until they're there in the room having that vigorous debate. Although in the end, Romaine, we've talked about this, they all decide to come to the same decision.
I don't understand. This is triggering for me. Because everyone, when they gave forward guidance and they gave the dot plot, everyone complained, why are they doing this? And now they're not doing it. And everyone's saying, oh, they're not giving us any guidance.
We need more transparency. People always want more information. They just want a position for how they're going to come out ahead.
We still have 2 months till the next Fed meeting and the decision
what are we going to do? What are we going to talk about?
And also Jackson Hole at the end of August. So in between now and then, we already had those inflation data earlier today, but we'll still have a batch with CPI.
Is that cargo ship with all the cars on it, is that still burning out there in the ocean?
Let's ask Paul Sweeney.
Matt Miller, are you available for a live hit from the ship?
We should point out, though, in all seriousness here, you are right. We don't get until late September before we get the next Fed meeting here, but that kind of opens the door, I think, for a lot of folks. If you are focused on corporate fundamentals and even some of the economic data, because there's going to be a lot of economic data between now and then here.
Starting with jobs next Friday.
Starting with jobs, and if it is positive, or at least positive in the eyes of the market here, you don't necessarily have the Fed in the way to maybe disrupt that unless, Powell wants to come out and say something at Jackson Hole.
Perhaps even more important, we'll be getting a read on the consumer from Amazon and from Apple. I know everyone fixates on Amazon Web Services as a driver for the stock price and certainly for growth, but what it says about consumer spending will tell us a lot about whether this is a soft landing or not.
Well, and real goods spending as a percentage of all PCE still remains above those pre-COVID levels. So I know that this is bad news for the Jay Powells of the world, but I don't see any cracks starting to come for the consumer. So, Jess, maybe we're going to see that when it comes to these consumer earnings that we're going to get a little bit later on. But so far, that spending just seems super resilient.
And also, we're going to have the SLOOS next week, the Senior Loan Officer Survey, and obviously checking in on how the banks are holding up right now. But then Austin Goolsbee, a voting member of the Fed, is set to speak on the calendar on Monday, so I'll be looking ahead to that.
Yeah, and Romaine, you and I are going to be at MetLife this weekend for the Beyonce concert, fueling the economy from New Jersey.
Yeah,
so.
you got to do your part here, Maddie. Be sure to buy a lot of. By the way, a T-shirt. You know how much a T-shirt costs there?
Oh, don't even tell me.
60, 70, 80?
Yeah, it was like 55. It was like the cheap one.
I'm cutting myself off. Yeah.
It's a keepsake, though. With Carol gone, do you still have the wine segment on Friday, or how does that work?
They didn't give it to us.
They didn't give it to us. So we're going to have to complain about
I
that.
co-hosted with her on her radio program, and they had a wine segment, and she took all the wine home.
There was a tequila segment once that we got to do. It was great.
Yes. All right.
We need to do something like that here.
We're going to leave that.
We'll loosen this show up a little bit.
We're going to leave that to you guys to figure out with your producers who are in my ear telling me to rap.
What
guys.
I don't tell you is this is gin right here.
So, no, not gin, Romaine. Save that for tomorrow. All right, that's going to do it for our cross-platform coverage of the market close
Madison.
on Bloomberg TV. Oh, God. Radio and YouTube. Happy Friday, everyone. We're going to continue our coverage on Monday. Stick with us. Have a great weekend, everyone, and enjoy the Beyonce concert for all who celebrate.